Listen, children are laughing between the houses, not tents, not caves. Houses, round walls of stone, floors of flat paving, roofs that will still be standing when these children are gray. For the first time in the whole long story of our kind, people have stopped wandering. They have a place, a home. Wild wheat dries golden on the rocks. The dead rest close, beneath the very floors where the living sleep. The world has finally warmed. The ice is loosening its grip. It feels like the beginning of everything, and for a few short generations it truly is. It is not the beginning. It is the top of a hill just before the fall, because the cold is coming back. Yara will be born into these warm walls, and she will live to walk out of them for the last time. This is the story of the first people on Earth who ever had a home, and the first people who ever lost one, and it will all happen inside a single lifetime. 13,000 years ago, in the land we now call the Levant, the world was turning kind. The great ice age was ending. Rain came. Wild wheat and barley spread across the hills in fields no one had planted. And where the food stood still, people could stand still too. We call them the Natufians. At a place archaeologists name Ain Malaha, they built something new under the sun, a village. 50 round houses, dug slightly into the earth, paved with slabs, ringed by stone walls as high as a person's chest. Yara is born inside those walls. She is the first kind of human there has ever been, a child who grows up in one place. She does not know the endless walking her ancestors knew. She knows this hearth, this doorway, this lake. In autumn, the whole village goes out with sickles, blades of flint set in bone, and cuts the wild grain. The flint takes a glassy shine from the stalks, a sheen we can still see on the tools today. They grind it on stone slabs, store it in pits, and eat through the winter without moving a single step. This is the secret at the heart of the village. You do not need to farm to settle down. You only need a wild harvest rich enough to feed you all year in one place. For a few thousand golden years, the warming world hands the Natufians exactly that. Gazelle in the hills, fish and waterfowl at the lake, nuts in the oak woods, wild grain standing free for the cutting. It is so abundant that they can afford to stay, to build, to bury, to make art and jewelry from shell and bone. They are not farmers. They are hunter-gatherers who got rich enough to stop wandering. And that richness feels permanent. Why would it not? It has been this way her whole life and her mother's whole life before her. They have neighbors, the first people ever to have neighbors, the same faces year after year. They keep dogs now. One grave holds a woman with her hand laid gently on a puppy, and they keep their dead. Beneath the floors, under 3 houses built one on top of another, lie the buried, kin the living walk over every day. Think about how new all of this is. For 200,000 years, every human being who ever lived was born on the move and died on the move, carrying everything they owned, chasing the food across the seasons. To be born in a house, to sleep every night of your life under the same roof, to know that the wall you touch as a child will still be standing when you are old, that is brand new under the sun. Yara's people have invented the idea of a place that is yours, and with it, without knowing, they have invented something else, something no wanderer ever had to fear. They have invented the possibility of losing it. This is abundance, this is safety, this is home, and nobody in the village has any reason yet to believe it can end. It ends the way real catastrophes usually do, not in one terrible night, in a season that is simply wrong. One autumn the cold comes early and stays too long. The grain on the hills comes up thin, short, sparse. People shrug it off. Every place has a bad year, and they have grain in the pits and fat on their bones. They tighten their belts, lean on the stores, and wait for the spring that has never once failed to come. That is the trap of a slow catastrophe. It never announces itself. Each single season looks survivable, looks like it might be the last hard one, looks like next year the world will surely tilt back toward the warmth. And so no one runs while running is still easy. Spring comes weak, and the next winter is worse. This is not a bad year. This is a new world arriving. We have a name for it now, the Younger Dryas. As the Ice Age was ending, the cold came roaring back, almost to glacial depths. And here is the part that should chill you. Deep in the ice of Greenland, scientists can read the years like tree rings. The ice says this flip from warming world to bitter cold began shockingly fast. In some records, in only a few years, not a slow slide over centuries. A door slamming shut inside a single human life. The cause was hidden across the world, a shutdown of the great ocean currents that carry warmth north through the Atlantic. The same system scientists watch nervously today, for reasons that should be obvious. Far to the north, a dying ice sheet had been dumping cold, fresh water into the ocean, and at some tipping point, the great warm current that heats the northern world simply stalled and shut down. The warmth stopped flowing north. and the whole region Yara lives in, thousands of miles from that ocean, plunged back toward the cold and the dry in a handful of years. This is the lesson the younger Dryas teaches, and it terrifies the scientists who study it. The climate does not always change gently on a scale we can prepare for. Sometimes it lurches, but Yara knows none of that. She only knows the wheat is failing, the lake is lower, and the winters keep getting longer than the winters her mother knew. And this is the particular cruelty of it. A wandering people in a bad year simply walk somewhere better. That is what walking is for. But Yara's people traded that freedom for walls. They bet everything on this one place staying rich, the lake, the hills, the wild wheat that had always come back. The bet paid off for 2 or 3 generations. It felt like wisdom. It felt like the future. And now the very ground they anchored themselves to is turning against them, and their houses have become anchors in a storm. The world her whole life was built on is quietly, steadily being taken back, and the walls of home cannot hold out weather. A settled village is a beautiful thing until the food runs out. Then the very thing that made it strong becomes the trap. You cannot eat a house. You cannot carry a field of wheat that never grew, and 50 houses worth of people all need to eat from the same shrinking hills. By the fire the elders argue. Yara listens from the edge of the light. Some say, stay, this is home. Our dead are under the floors. Our grandparents built these walls. The wheat will come back. It always came back. Others say the wheat is not coming back. A village cannot walk to new food, but a family can. Stay and we bury the living beside the dead, and every year they hesitate makes it worse. The stored grain runs down. The gazelle grows scarce as the herds move away from the failing land. The strongest young people are the first to leave for other camps, and the village grows older and weaker without them. A settled life has no reserve of motion. A wandering band that hits hard times is already halfway to somewhere better. A village that hits hard times just sits there in its beautiful stone houses and empties out one hungry winter at a time. Both sides are right, which is the cruelest kind of argument. To stay is to starve slowly among everything you love. To leave is to give up the only home your people have ever built, to become wanderers again, as if the village never happened. And the archaeology tells us how it ended plainly, without softening it. The record shows the village is emptying. Occupation drops back toward what it was before the Natufians ever settled. The people scatter. They pick up their tools and their children and go mobile again, back to the wandering life their great-grandparents had left behind. As though the whole bright experiment of the village had been a dream the world decided to end. Everything the settled world had learned, the neighbors, the stored grain, the dead kept close, folds back up and is carried out through the low stone doorways. And notice what they are giving up beyond the walls. They are leaving their dead. The grandmothers and grandfathers lie beneath these floors, kept close on purpose, walked over every day so they were never truly gone. To abandon the village is to abandon them too, to walk away from the graves and never come back. For a people who buried their dead inside their homes, that may have been the hardest surrender of all. The first experiment in staying still is over. The cold has won, and the hardest walk in the world is the one out of your own front door. There is no scene in all of prehistory quieter than this one, or heavier. A family walking out of a house for the last time. Yara was born in these walls. She learned to walk on this paved floor. Her grandmother lies beneath it. Now she stoops through the doorway with everything she can carry on her back, and she does not look at the fields because the fields are bare. Behind her the hearth is cold. The grain pits are empty and open to the sky. The dogs whine at the change in the air. Nobody speaks. There is nothing to say that the footsteps do not already say. The dogs go with them, the same animals their people first drew close to the fire in these good years, now trotting beside them into the cold and the uncertainty. At least there is that. The dog does not care about walls. The dog cares only that its people are still together, still moving, still alive, and they are. Broken-hearted and hungry, but alive and walking. That is the brutal gift the wandering life gives back to them, the one the village had quietly taken away, the freedom to leave a dying place before it kills you. Feel the strangeness of this grief, because it is brand new in the world. Her ancestors mourn the dead. They had done that for 100,000 years. But no one before the Natufians had ever had a home to lose. You cannot lose a place until you have first belonged to one. Her ancestors owned the whole horizon and none of it. They were at home everywhere, and so they could be exiled from nowhere. Yara belonged to one small circle of stone by a lake, and that belonging is the very thing that is breaking her heart as she climbs away from it. To have a home is to be able to be homesick. It is a new kind of wealth and a new kind of wound, and she is among the first to carry both. Yara is among the first human beings ever to feel it, the specific ache of a doorway you will never walk through again. The stone walls will stand there for thousands of years, roofless, filling slowly with dirt, waiting for archaeologists who will not come for 13,000 more. And Yara walks north or east into the mountains, into the old wandering life, carrying a memory her children will inherit. And here is the strangest part of her grief. There is no ritual for it. Her people have songs for the dead and rites for the newborn, worn smooth by 100,000 years of use. But no one has ever mourned a house before. No one has ever needed words for the loss of a place, because until her lifetime, no place was ever truly yours to lose. So Yara carries a wound that has no name and no ceremony, the first of its kind in the human story. All she can do is remember, the memory of walls, the memory of golden wheat standing thick on the hills, the memory of what it felt like to stay. It would be easy to end here in the cold with the door shut behind her. But that is not the whole truth of it, because the Natufians did not simply vanish. They scattered and they survived and they remembered. Yara's children grew up on stories of the wheat, thick, golden, standing free for the taking on the hills of home. And when the world at last began to warm again and the grain crept back onto the slopes, something in them had changed. Their ancestors had chased the wild wheat wherever it grew, but this generation had learned in the hardest possible school that the wild cannot be trusted. It gives, and then without warning it takes everything back. There has to be a better way, a way to make the food come when you need it, where you need it, instead of praying to a sky that has already betrayed you once. So in here we must be honest, because scholars still argue fiercely over exactly how and why farming began. Some of their descendants stopped chasing the grain. They did something no human had ever done. They took the seeds and they buried them on purpose in ground they chose, so the wheat would come up where they wanted it when they needed it, not gathered, grown. It may be no accident that farming was born in the very lands the younger Dryas had emptied, among the descendants of the very people who had learned in their bones that the wild could not be trusted. Now, be careful here, because this is where the story is genuinely debated. Some scholars think the cold crisis pushed people toward farming. Others think farming came later in the warmth that followed for reasons of its own. The honest answer is that we do not fully know. What we do know is the shape of it. People who had tasted a settled life lost it to the cold, and then, within a few thousand years, built a new one that no drought could so easily take away. Loss may be exactly what taught us never to depend on the wild again. Yara lived to see the first homes on Earth abandoned. She never saw what her loss made possible, but her grandchildren stood in fields they had sown with their own hands and did not have to leave. There is a lesson buried in the ice cores and the empty villages, and it is not a comfortable one. It says that the warm, easy times are not promised. It says that a climate can turn on a people in the space of a few short years, and that even a settled, thriving world can be swept off the board in a single lifetime. The Natufians learned that the hard way, and it nearly ended them, but they did not let it end them. They took the worst thing that had ever happened to their kind and turned it, slowly, over generations, into the thing that would remake the world. They lost the first home in the world, and out of that loss, they learned to build one that would stay. The village by the lake fell silent, and the farms of the world rose in its place. Sometimes the end of one world plants the seed of the next.